Hello and welcome to the Winners Find a Way show. I am your host, Trent Clark, and I am super thrilled to have my good friend Rob Thompson from Game Plan You with me. Rob, how are you, buddy?
Life is good. Life is good. Good to see you.
Yeah, Rob and I we are recording post Thanksgiving today, so super excited about that. And the holidays are upon us. Always excited about getting through all the holiday stuff. Enjoy it, yet a lot of challenges in that. So everybody, happy holidays. And I am a CEO of Leadershipity, serial entrepreneur, international speaker, having spoken 17 countries. I am the author of Leading Winning Teams, and that book coming to you from Wiley Publishing. Pick it up all in all the different genres now, from the book to the audiobook and ebook too. So you can get them all always. Amazon, Barnes and Noble, you can find it. All right, check that out. Most people know me because I spent over 13 years in professional baseball coaching in 3 World Series. And man, on the Winners Find a Way show, I love to bring in guests that have unique skills. They have unique background. I always love it when I come back to the entrepreneurial sports merge, because that's where my life lives and I love it. So with Rob Thompson, no different here. Rob's a University of New Haven graduate, played football out there, started a number of different companies in the sports media play here and programming in sports, and has done very well, had a couple exits. He now owns Game Plan U, which is a sports innovation startup studio, which is so cool. And then I think there's so many more now, these verticals of sports media that we didn't have, Rob, when we were kids, right? Like, it's so different now. And so excited to hear about that. A New Haven, Connecticut kid that didn't go to Yale. So, I guess the hometown kids don't go to Yale. So like that's, it's probably tough to get in as a hometown kid into Yale, but super excited about having you on the show, man. How you been?
Good. It's we're at that point in our lives now where the gray hairs come in and you start looking at the back nine and you start thinking about kind of what's next to wrap up, the back part of your career and how could you make an impact in people's lives and make some money and to doing so, like what you're doing. I went the same route, wrote a book, started a podcast, and kind of recalibrated my life after 30 something years out there in corporate America and with the NFL and the Walt Disney Company and owning and starting up several startups and startovers. And you pick your head up and you're like, what the hell just happened in our lives? It went by too quick. And how do we finish this ball game up, really strong? And we all kind of look at, making impacts and helping other people. So that's where I am right now with my everyday focus.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, I think that is a consistent challenge to keep the game right and stay on top of your game, right? You've now been married 33 years to your college sweetheart. You got 4 kids. And so, and one still left at home, which is pretty awesome. Still going through those high school years, which is always fun. And I mean, primarily the kids raised up in New York, little Florida time now, back at home in New Haven. What was the move back to get back to the roots in New Haven? What was the desire there?
You know what? It was one of those things. Whenever you say I'll never move back there, that's usually somehow you end up back there.
Yeah.
It was one of those deals. I had an exit in a sports marketing event company, tech company that we owned called North American Sports Group. It was a roll up. It was a private equity roll up. I left Disney, and we rolled up, Hoop It Up 300 basketball.
Sorry about that.
So there you go. It was a pretty good sizzle reel, by the way.
Yeah, yeah.
You can see it again.
I want to get a second chance.
Yeah,
I thought I was gonna. When you said Disney, I thought I was gonna have to bleep out a bad word. Just kidding.
No, so we owned a company that we owned and operated 250 tournaments and 3-on-3 basketball, which is called Hoop It Up, Kick It 3v3 soccer, 5-on-5 flag football, called Let It Fly. So lacrosse, and then we owned a bunch of stuff, a digital media agency and all that. We sold it to Kevin Durant's group in 2016, and then I had a press restart, and I got a call from my old athletic director and my alma mater to come back and help him raise a bunch of money to build a performance center, 35,000 square foot performance center, and a go Division 1 in athletics and move up a level. So I gave myself a little timeline to do so, and we raised 20 million during COVID, and we built a performance center, which is Power Five level for a Division II school. It's the first building they built for athletics in 50 years, and we got invited to 4 different Division I conferences, all of which we turned down because they didn't make sense. They weren't in our region, so it would have been a lot of traveling. So so I accomplished that goal, and along the way, I started Game Plan U, which was to help student athletes discover their next thing, their next purpose. And I did, and I also found out during that time the majority of them want to be entrepreneurs, or want to start a business or start a business in high school. And then NIL came along, and that just accelerated the whole kind of idea of monetizing your name and brand and all that. But I'm not on that side of it. I'm on the, okay, let's drill down. Let's simplify and make it practical for you. So I did get the call back. She said, "Can you come back to Connecticut?" And so I decided to kind of go back there and go back home. My parents are still here. My wife's family's still here. And, we came back and we hopefully made that impact that I was looking to make after I sold my business. So, yeah, there's a reason.
Yeah, I think that's really cool, man. I think it's good to kind of go back to the roots. Always good. And I've said that 1,000 times too. I'll never go back. And that's probably where I'll end up. My mom is still in my hometown, and so I get there quite a bit to see her. But yeah. So one of the things that most people don't know about you, Rob, is that you're dyslexic. Coming up as a kid, we rise through the ranks, probably as good athletes. And that creates some opportunity. Meanwhile, we're supposed to be doing the school thing, and that looks a little different for a guy who's got dyslexia than for the rest of us. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, it was something that they didn't know what it was back in the 70s and 80s. So I never got diagnosed with it when I was in elementary, middle school, or even high school. And I went to public schools, and I was kind of the kid that they just want to push through anyway. So a D- to me was a victory, But it was dyslexia, ADD. Those are the things that you didn't talk about it back then. You didn't know what it was, and it was just maybe a kid that wasn't into school. But I love school. I always have. I love going to school, and I was a 2-sport athlete, and Naval Academy was the one that recruited me to play football and lacrosse, and I couldn't get in. And, my parents were blue collar folks, so they had no idea. My dad thought I could just join the Navy and play at the academy. He had no idea about it. So my local college, University of New Haven, came in, and there was a coach who's from New Haven by the name of Tony Sperando. He's the famous line coach. He's the head coach of Miami Dolphins and the Raiders. He's an alum, and he was my line coach through college. And he built me up to go, and I signed with the New England Patriots, and I played 2 seasons over in Europe, and I met my wife there. So the world works in funny ways sometimes. So UNH was the only school to actually allow me, to get me in academically. I was a Prop 48 kid back then. You could not play if you did not have it was like a 1.8 grade point average. I didn't have that, so now it's a 2.3. So I was allowed to play Division II, and I made the best of it. Played 44 games, and was an All-American, and signed. Played 22 professional football games after I was done playing in college. And my pathway was where I was supposed to be, and how my life turned out. And when I went to New Haven, I had to take an exam just to get in. My summer after I graduated from high school, barely, and the teacher, I have numeric dyslexia, so I could, all that other stuff. She basically said, she's the one who discovered it, and she said, I can help you understand what it is, and that's the key. You just have to understand why you're getting frustrated, why you can't focus, why you can't concentrate, why things seem like they're backwards and forwards, and you've just given up. And once she helped me discover what it was, everything in my life changed. And I graduated with over a 3 point whatever. I was a criminal law major, and my whole world changed once I discovered that I wasn't an idiot, and my superpower is creativity and intuition and what they call street smarts. And creativity was the best thing that helped me with my career. And those are the things that I survived on. So anyway, so yeah, that's it. Thank goodness I end up, going to school there, and the school saved me. So 30 years later, I came back and returned the favor, and I repaid my debt to the school that I've always felt like I needed to repay. And life is good. So sometimes coming full circle and going back to the place you said, yeah, I'll never go back there. Sometimes it works out.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Like, I think it's the impact of a teacher, right? To show you, I think, is always a good thing. I know you and I have had a lot of impact, like Tony, as coaches that were in our lives, but there's a lot of other people that come along from life that helps. Talk to me a little bit about how, not being able to do something really well sharpened other skill sets that you had. Like it created certainly a lot of resourcefulness of how you're going to learn, because you don't have any problem learning, Rob. Like, we know as pro athletes, learning is a huge skill. If you can't learn, you can't play, because people get booted every day that have tons of skill but can't seem to gather what we're trying to work on, right? And so you learned how to learn, and you became very resourceful, even though you're not necessarily seeing the playbook like everybody else is seeing the playbook. So talk to me about sharpening those skills from one skill that was maybe not as strong as others.
Man, that's a great question. As I think about it, what really comes back to me it was what they call self-awareness now. And for me, it wasn't about trying to gain more skills. It was about understanding where my strengths were. So once I understood that, number one, I'm creative. I'm a people person, right? I'm not afraid to sell or market. And once I understood that part of it, I went into a major that I didn't have to memorize anything. Criminal law was, if you could memorizing laws wasn't as hard because it was criminal justice, and it was more about intuition and feel and psychology. And that to me was where I knew I could, and knowing that I did really well in that. And it wasn't a major it was a major that was interesting to me, but I picked a major that also didn't require me to have to memorize a ton of stuff. It was about feel and interaction and people, right? And mindfulness and all the things that we talk about today that we didn't know back then. So as I look back on this, I went all in on that part of my career. I said, if I could align myself with a career, and entrepreneurship was it. I coached college football at Boston University. So when Tony left New Haven, he became the offensive coordinator at BU with Chris Palmer, and I became his line coach. And I realized I didn't like the day-to-day of coaching, but I love the recruiting part of it and helping kids make the biggest decision of their life. Usually is where they're going to go to college, right? Not only and where they're going to play, but where they're going to go to college. So BU was a great place for me, but I also checked off the box of, I don't know if I like coaching every day. Maybe that's not the best thing that I want to do, but I love recruiting. So I left Boston University and I started a recruiting service, the very first recruiting service in the United States in 1991. It's called East Coast Recruiting. And I ended up selling it to a company called Athletes Inc. Athletes Inc. got bought out because they did all international programming. And then I went to work. They got bought out by the NFL. I went to work for the NFL. Yeah. So I ran all their youth development programs globally for them. So it's all about finding the thing that you are really good at. For me, it wasn't about developing other skills at that time. For me, it was about maximizing the space and the thing that made me the most successful. And entrepreneurship happened to be a natural thing for me.
Staying with this entrepreneur kind of theme, man, it's what I love about NIL, right? People argue good, bad. I don't know yet. I think the jury's out, right? What I do love is that as a budding entrepreneur from a young age, I would have loved to have put my name, image, and likeness on a docket for my LLC through college to start making money and building revenue. I knew how to do that from the time I was delivering papers at 11 years old. You add more people to the route, you make more money, and so I was always intrigued by it, but now I just love the idea of kids coming out with marketing skills, customer service, like, how do I do this media thing? How do I position myself for a message? What does that look like? So I mean, it is entrepreneur like 100 level, right from like you should have an LLC so you don't have your name associated with any kind of liability of an agreement you just made. And I see kids like that who miss that every day, right? And it's scary out there, but yet it's super fun, and I'm super excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are, especially, being in college athletics at the time it was being talked about, and the time that it became, a thing. In typical higher education, they didn't understand that at the time this was the greatest, and it still is the greatest educational moment for any student possible. They just open up the world to say, we're going to give you permission to create your own business.
Yeah.
Right. And unfortunately, most people in higher education have never left education since kindergarten. So they don't know what it's like to start a business, a real business that goes 12 months a year, 7 days a week, right? So they didn't see that. They missed that part of it. They missed the part that we need to be partners, marketing partners with our student athletes, regardless of the level, because those kids are going to help us promote our brand, promote our school, and help us with enrollment. They didn't see it, and they still don't see it. So that's the frustrating part about it, when you're sitting there saying, listen, this is not about the $30 brand ambassador check that they're going to get, because 99% of them, that's all they're going to make, right? Or they're going to do trade-off for free product, right? You're misunderstanding the pay-to-play model, which is collectives and other things that are just for probably 3 to 4 dozen colleges that are going to be able to really afford to pay players, right? And all the rest of it's going to be turned upside down. But what happens to the 99% that are down here in the bottom of the pyramid? It's called entrepreneurship, right? And entrepreneurship is the new internship. So you're better off giving them the skills to understand how to start a business, from sales, marketing, right? Consumer products, pivoting, taxes, all the things that the skill set that they will take with them. The NCAA handed it to us. They handed us the platform to say, here's your permission, let's go do it. Let's help these kids do it. So Game Plan U was started with helping those kids, number one, discover their career transition into either entrepreneurship, where they create a business together with a group, solopreneurship, where they're just selling t-shirts or going one-on-one, but skills, or back into work in the sports industry as a career pathway. So there's 3 verticals into that I started with Game Plan U. The only way I was able to do is because I worked in college athletics and I was an entrepreneur in corporate America. So I saw it. I saw this movie. I saw it happening. And now I'm not out there saying, this is not an NIL program for me. This is not a recruiting service. This is let's transition these kids, give them a pathway to explore and discover their career path within sports innovation.
Love it.
How's that?
You wrote a book called How to Land a Dream Job If Dad Doesn't Own the Team.
Yeah, I know it's long. It's long. It's too long.
I like it though.
I came up with it.
Like, how to land your dream job if dad doesn't own the team. So like, give us the premise of that book. Like, how are people shaping and positioning themselves for real opportunity that don't have what we would quote unquote is like the silver spoon, that you don't have a massive advantage over other people by whatever a family member or an in that you have with a big group?
I just thought that there were so many kids that I was talking to with our 550 something student athletes and working with them to help them down this path. I heard a reoccurring theme all the time. Where do I start? How do I start? How do I get into sports? Like, how did you work for the NFL? Like, how did that happen for you? And it was like, listen, I had no contacts other than from college coaching, right? So other than that, I had no idea in the industry itself. So I broke out a little bit of my story and also emphasized my story is going to be much different than your story, right? And so, but if a kid like me who struggled with dyslexia his entire life, went to a school that most people outside of 30 miles from here never heard of, right? How do you get there? And I said, if I could do it, you could do it, but you all have to have your own pathway. Number one, you have to do a self-examination of yourself, right? You just have to look at yourself and what am I good at? What do I want to do? Right? What are you willing to do? Are you willing to eat ramen noodles for another 5 years out of college? Right? And understand that this next 6, 7 years of your journey is all about discovery. Like the clock is not on you. Don't put the clock on yourself. And not everybody with a great looking logo is a fun place to work either. So, I help them along the way, right? I help them along the way to kind of understand that part of it. So the book is about a little bit about my journey, but more about a self-evaluation of them. It's a guidebook for them. So it's a guide to kind of write out some things. There's a lot of interviews that I did with my own podcast, and I shared stories of other folks in the industry and how they got involved in it. And I said, right now, the easiest way to probably get involved in the sports industry is volunteer. I basically volunteered for my first season, coaching college football, right? And then it was, all right, you prove yourself, you move on. I volunteered for a weekend with the NFL. That's really how it started. I volunteered for the first NFL play football program back in 1994, so we created the NFL flag program, which is now now it's an Olympic sport, 5-on-5 flag football. But I volunteered for the first weekend. I met the right people. I showed up. I was enthusiastic. I was positive. I'm like, this is great, And when anybody said this is not real football, I said, well, there's a football, right? There's an end zone. It's real football. Now look what's happening with hockey. There's 3v3 hockey, 3-on-3 basketball, right? So it's the pure elements and fundamentals of the sport. So I made a living the next 30 years in that area of family, entertainment, and sports and media. So yeah, that's
what's your podcast, Rob?
5% Club.
The 5% Club.
Yeah, 5% Club. So my thesis around that is I was tired of listening to parents talk about my kid is the Division I athlete, and I was, as someone who's you kind of been there as a coach and administrator and all that. And I was just like, it doesn't matter. Like, if you're in baseball, you're probably only getting pitchers from Connecticut and the Northeast, right? You're not getting catchers. You're not getting infield, right? You might get lucky with a first baseman, but for the most part, you know what you're getting, right? And if you look at Major League Baseball players, majority of them did not play in the SEC or Power 5, right? Most of them came from JUCOs, right? Or smaller schools. Yeah. Right now, right, that's just how it is. Hockey, right? You look at hockey, you can't get a roster spot on a Division I hockey team. Like Quinnipiac College and Yale, they're all 23-year-old Canadians. So what's happening now? They're playing club hockey down in the SEC conference for LSU and all the best hockey players from the Northeast and besides probably Michigan and Minnesota, but some of those kids too there's not enough roster spots.
Yeah.
So 5% Club to me was a random, just a random TikTok video I did about, listen, parents, calm down. There's 8 million high school students student athletes in the United States. There's only 500,000 roster spots. That's 5%, roughly 5% of your kids that are going to actually make a roster. Forget scholarships, forget any of that, a roster spot. So just make a roster spot. It doesn't matter what level. Find a school that you want to go to, and if it works out. So I started with this 5% Club, and it blew up. So I started this 5% podcast where I interview former college athletes to talk about their transition, what they're doing, and most of those were entrepreneurs. So that's how I got to the 5% Club.
Love it. I mean, I think it's a staggering statistic, right? 8 million high school athletes, and probably 150,000 per year become a freshman into a program because there's only 580. I think it's 580,000 total college athletes, and that's 1, 2, 3 NAIA. Like, it's all of it, right? This isn't a big Power 580,000. No. That's a much smaller number, and so. It's always, for the people like yourself who know, and I tell people, I was a 2-sport Division I athlete, they go, oh, wow. Like, wait a minute. Like, and I'm like, yeah, it's rare air to be a D1 athlete. I love the way you said that. There are so few roster spots, and it is earned, never given, as your book states, How to Land a Job Without Your Dad Doesn't Own the Team. Like, it's not given. These people's jobs are depending on you coming in and contributing immediately. And
I said that's very true. I'm sorry to interrupt. And the one thing I tell my boys, because my oldest son went through it, and he played in college, and then my younger son is tracking that way too. And there's nothing I ever press him for, but they would ask me all the time, what should I do? I said, whatever you do, imagine whatever your imagination, whatever you picture yourself playing college athletics, go for that. Like if you just want to get on the field, and if you get to play lower, but my son wanted to walk on. I said, listen, here's the reality of it. I said, I played Division II. I played 44 Division II college football games, right? So anybody listening to this, you're like, yeah, whatever. I said, but I also played 22 professional football games.
Right.
And I said, that's still not as impressive if I told you I played at Syracuse and I was just a walk-on on the kickoff team for 4 years. Most people are, oh, that's pretty cool. What was it like playing at Syracuse? Who'd you play with? Who got, right? I was like, I don't know. I had five guys from my team at Division II go to the NFL, plus 2 of our coaches become head coaches. Yeah. That's pretty damn cool. But people perceive the levels, and it validates who they think they are as an athlete and as a parent. And it's a bunch of bullshit, right? And that's why kids get left out. That's why kids and parents get disappointed and left out. If you're lucky enough to have the grades and the talent to play Division I, God bless you. Doesn't make you any better than the kids at our lower levels, though, right?
Well,
doesn't make you any better.
There's a ton of players who I think err in going to Division I, and because they do get a roster spot, but they don't get a spot in the field. They don't get a spot between the lines. And so what happens is 3.5 years go by till all of a sudden you get a little cup of coffee inside the lines. I mean, it's not much. When, hey, if you'd have made a choice to go to a school and played 44 games, practicing each week, living that understanding, that recovery in between, getting ready for a new team every week, what was required of you in that's a massive learning curve of hyper learning that athletes must go through, because that is kind of the tribulation of it all, right? Is going through that fire. And that's why people love to hire athletes, right? Because if they've been through that tribulation, they've been through that fire, they're like, well, they're going to contribute in my organization. You're like, yeah, you're darn right they are, because they know exactly how to do it. And they know how to learn fast. Hyper learning is a super skill. And so I love that. I love the 5% Club. Great name. Yeah. Let's come back to this, your game plan, because one of the things you used before I love, which is, I've had some great startups and I've had some start overs, and as a guy who started 14 brands, I can tell you not all A+ winners. Okay. There are some real challenging duds in there that were costly. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Time, energy, personal relationship, all sorts of cost.
All sorts of costs, your focus, but everybody will tell you, and Trent, you'll say the same thing. There's more that you learn in kind of a business not working than, because you're always one phone call away. Your timing could be off. Your product, maybe you got a bad co-owner or co-founder, or maybe you just got a bad investor that's putting a lot of pressure on you, or whatever it may be. There's always something. The stars have to align so much, and people get caught up now, because before you could scale things quickly in tech, there was a lot of selling stuff out of the back of your car. There was a lot of door-to-door, a lot of banging, a lot of phone calls. You could accelerate things. So people get enamored now with the valuation of these tech companies that are so overvalued sometimes. And it's a 25, 26-year-old, really smart founder. The stars aligned, and some good things happen for them. So God bless them. But could they do it over and over and over again? A lot of times, once you got a little bit of money in you, yes. But there's a thing that I say all the time: entrepreneurship is not just a label. Like, you can't teach it. Schools, higher ed, love to kind of promote it now because they know it's sexy and it's a thing that's trendy right now. It used to be sport management. You used to go get a sport management degree, which is the biggest waste of money that you'll ever make in getting an education. Get an accounting degree or finance degree before you get a sport management degree. But they sold it, and they still sell it. And so now they're doing it with entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is an earned title that you have after you do it over and over and over again for a longer period of time, not just supporting you, but supporting families and people that work for you and putting them over and over again. And that's a very hard thing to do. So starting over, that's as hard as a startup, right? Because you kind of licking your wounds and you took a loss and you probably lost a lot of money doing it. And you probably lost a little bit of reputation with some of the investors that you had and family and friends that put some money into it, got tired of listening to you talk about it. But you got to get up and keep going. Like what you said, Trent, it's the skill set and the traits that athletes have, right? Is you're able to kind of say, that was a loss. I'm embarrassed. But guess what? Tomorrow's another day. The sun will, the sun does come up on a Monday. So let's go.
Yep.
So anyways, and today's Monday, by the way.
I like one of the other things you talked about too, kind of going through that career into an NFL position. Like contributors come from everywhere, and taking advantage and being prepared and ready, positioning yourself for an opportunity, such as volunteering at the NFL 5x5 flag football, which, by the way, is my favorite youth sport in the world. By the way, there's not a better youth sport for these kids to learn about team, game, skills, all that's required in something that's already challenging. And it's really challenging once you get pads on. So it is one of the best learning things I've ever seen, in addition to the fact that it's probably, if a good coach comes along, it's a real opportunity to put every kid in a position to be successful on the field for many reps, not just every once in a while, but many reps, and they can contribute regardless of their athletic ability. And that is something 100%. That every kid deserves and should get while they're out there. And I think that is probably the biggest gift I've seen to youth sports is 5-on-5 youth flag football.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it was a labor of love for us. We started off with just that philosophy of every boy and girl 6 to 14 needs to be able to touch the football at some point, right? Yep. Just because you're the chubby kid, you can't be put in line, because a chubby kid could grow out of it and become a slender quarterback or receiver or whatever. So every single person has a chance to touch the ball. We used to make it mandatory. You had to rotate quarterbacks every half too. I don't think they do that anymore, but that was our philosophy. It's understanding the wants and needs and attention span of children. And it was always, we're not taking away from soccer and other fall sports that you're playing. It's only on Sundays. Show up an hour before the game, get a quick practice in, and then you play. Like, this was a supplemental sport to put a ball in kids' hands. Now, it was run through NFL properties at the time, so it really was about consumer acquisition. The more you play a sport, the more you become a fan and consumer of the sport. They weren't looking to produce more players. There's enough players and funnels to get players. But now there's a sure reflection when you look back and you talk to the NFL players. They're like, oh yeah, I started off playing 5-on-5 flag football. So we saw the full cycle of it coming on. And it was really it was saying, we don't want the football guys coaching this. We want the gym teachers. We want the volunteer parents, because it's easy enough to coach it. Once the parents got involved, then it become a little bit, hey, we got to practice 5 nights a week. And we're like, no, time out. It's cheap. All you need is a t-shirt, a football, and a flag belt, right? You put 4 fields on one football field or soccer field because you go sideline to sideline. Like, it's simple to do. Don't overcomplicate it, right? And we found that what we found out of that is that the females up into the age of 12 were better than because our first global championship was in Toronto, and a team of 6 Japanese females beat a team of Pop Warner kids from Florida. Wow. They were playing Pop Warner. It was a Pop Warner team, made up the flag team. They smoked them. Yeah, because they didn't make mistakes. That. They weren't ad-libbing.
Yeah, I just had a young lady who played for us forever as a young, right through the 14s. And she dominated at the 14s. Like, she dominated 8th grade, flag football, right? And loved having her, helped us, win the championship, whatever that, for the local thing. And now, she's calling back home. Her parents are flying out to watch her university intramural flag championship, where she's using all of our verbiage, right? Take care of the baby, keep running, all these things that we were teaching in flag football, these little things about how it's important, the strategy of the game, right? The fundamentals, and teaching these girls, like, hey, you know how to take a handoff, get your elbow out. And I just love it, man. I love it that this stuff carries through. And as you know, and I know, Rob, as coaches, I'll know you know it when you can teach it, right? And so now you've got these kids who have learned it from someone who taught them along the way. And now they're young adults helping their buddies out at school going, hey, I know this stuff because somebody taught me.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really as simple as that. The hardest part was coaching coaches how to coach kids, right? Yeah. It was the explanation it was the explanation, demonstration, right? Participation theory. And it wasn't, let's not have 20 kids standing around just watch and listen to a coach, like explain it, demonstrate it. Now let's get the kids participating as a group. Not one kid going out for the pass with the coach passing the ball. It's like the kids need to learn how to throw the ball, not a 35-year-old dad. So it was breaking down those rules and changing the narrative around football that I was really, really proud of being part of that. And now seeing that become part of the Olympic sports in Olympic Games in 2028 in LA. And now I'll get to reconnect with all my I'm now reconnected with all my old colleagues at the NFL and doing some consulting for USA Flag Football and, kind of being one of the old school guys that came up with the drills and came up with the rules and all that. So it's one of the most rewarding parts of my career.
That's cool. Let's talk another thing about your career. When you talked about volunteering, right? I was a volunteer in pro sports. Like we called them internships, but they're non-paid. So listen, it's volunteering.
Yeah. Right?
Listen, you are an absolute massive contributor to where someone has no budget, right? And so all of a sudden you become a commodity. Now, one of the things that I always get asked about my pro sports career, 13 years in Major League Baseball, was, Trent, it's all who you know. And I'm like, no, it's who knows you. Tony knew Rob to be a hardcore, hard-nosed athlete who would come to practice every day, ready to go. He saw your work ethic, and he said, listen, I'd like this guy on my staff. He took his ability to the highest level he could, played 22 games in the league, and now he's ready to pass that on to other players. And I know how much and hard he's willing to give to contribute to the organization. So it's not that Tony, it's that Tony knows Rob and knows how Rob is, what he's capable of, and how much he can contribute. Is that fair?
Yeah, very fair. This is exactly how it worked. Yeah.
So what would you tell kids who need, this is another thing. I'll use another example for you. If you go to the NFL thing and stand around and don't help out and don't ever offer any enthusiasm and any assistance, they're not tapping you on the shoulder saying, hey, come along with us. You could be a champion of this whole thing. They're not even going to remember that you volunteered that day. You positioned yourself ready to contribute. If you were telling kids today, get out there and have influence, and I do this inside of a lot of organizations. If you want to move in the ladder, big organizations like Disney, who you and I both worked for because they own the Angels when I was there, their executives are all sorts of part of internal foundations, and get involved in something you want to do with some of the executives and show them on the nonprofit side, on the volunteer side, how much you're willing to contribute as much as you contribute at work. And they're going to all of a sudden know who you are. And that's going to build a relationship inside an influencer. So I recommend that all the time. What do you tell people?
Be patient. Be patient, be willing to help, have a servant's mentality. And don't look at the end product. Be willing to make sure that people have a good experience, especially in sports. You know, so if you're selling tickets, if you're volunteering at a 5K, just make sure you're there to assist people to have and you're going to open up a whole.
Rob, I lost you for a second. Little technical difficulty here. Can you hear me okay? I've got a little technical difficulty here as I've lost Rob's connection, his audio to me. But I do want to kind of wrap here, and I'm going to hopefully get Rob back here to kind of close show here. But for everybody out there, Winners Find a Way show every Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. We have a live show, and then our podcast releases every Friday for all the major networks on all the podcast shows. Please jump out there, go find Leading Winning Teams at any of your favorite store and pick up a copy. Highly recommend Rob's book, How to Land a Dream Job If Dad Doesn't Own the Team. Check out Game Plan U, especially if you're in sports innovation. I mean, there's so much going on now in sports media. I'm just thrilled to see the continued progress in sports media and where Rob has been through a lot of these places and had some really fun, interesting exits along the way. And what a dynamic life from Rob Thompson. So for those who have heard, I'm sure you will hear more from Rob Thompson on some of our other work. But for Rob Thompson, I am Trent Clark, and this is Winners Find a Way. And thank you so much for joining us today on the show. We can't wait to see you next time on Winners Find a Way.